Suppose you're sitting in your living room, relaxed, watching TV. Then all of a sudden you think, I need a snack. I'm going to walk into the kitchen. And there, to your surprise, is a grandiose zebra in your kitchen. You think, where did that zebra come from? Mr. Toastmaster, fellow Toastmasters, and welcome guests. Scientists now believe that the universe has not always been here. It had a beginning. Yes, at some time in the past it didn't exist. With this beginning, what started it? What started it? And I'm going to talk about two choices. This is my speech today, both based on faith. The late Stephen Hawking said, almost everyone now believes that the universe and time itself had a beginning at the Big Bang. Ever since I was a boy, I grew up in a Christian home, but I've always been interested in science and chemistry and all those kind of things. So going to church every week, you can see how there's conflict there of science versus faith. And how do you make sense of that? And as a kid, I really struggled with that. I didn't know how to make sense of this because there were really no good answers. I plotted out the age of the universe versus time. And you can see in 1779, it was only 78,000 years. By the late 1800s, 1880s, it had grown to 20 to 100 million years. And then in 2012, it was at 13.7 billion, which is the latest number I read today. And if you look at the growth rate, that means that the universe is actually growing 139 million years a year, based on that calculation. Like the zebra, how did we get here? How did we get here? And there's two megatrends I want to talk about today. Surprisingly, though, each is based on faith. It's not science versus faith. What I learned is each one is based on faith. And science versus God is not really the fair comparison because of that underlying principle. And I wanted to define faith. Faith is something that can't be proven absolutely. It can't be proven absolutely. And none of us were here. We don't know. We don't know how it was done, right? First, let's look at the evolutional faith hypothesis. The universe and everything in it is a product of purely material things that arose from change. I plotted this backwards. It looks different from the other one. But originally, the universe in 65, which some people remember in this room, was only 275 million miles across, the start. That was the start. By 72, 71 million. And as you can see, it kept shrinking down. To 1983, it was a trillionth the diameter of a proton. How would you even measure that? Anyway, today it's a singularity. The density would have been infinite at that point. I found this picture in my research. It talked about the quantum theory. And from what I read, quantum fluctuation started the universe, or that's the latest theory in my research. And they introduced the idea of imaginary time. And I imagine everybody in this room would like some imaginary time because it's in the vertical direction, not the horizontal direction that we all live in today. When a quantum fluctuation, whatever it's supposed to be, it certainly isn't nothing. It has mass, energy, physical laws, and like the zebra in our kitchen, had to come from somewhere. After billions of years, pools of water filled with increasingly complex chemicals, and from those simple life forms emerged a mix of amino acids that evolved over eons into human beings. Our universe, said one scientist, is simply one of those things that happens from time to time. If the universe had a starting point, then who or what set it in motion? The faith in God hypothesis, though, is the other mega trend that I wanted to talk about, that everything was created from a creator, from a God who brought everything into existence. The idea of a creator, particularly a loving one, opens a whole realm of hope as opposed to the scientific world, which says destruction ends the universe that lacked a purpose at all. In this view, we're not here by chance. We're here for a purpose. So, where did the zebra come from? It came from nothing? Ridiculous. Nothing comes from nothing, right? Then what about the earth, the stars, the skies? Us. Certainly, like the zebra, they couldn't come from nothing. In conclusion, if I look at the faith and evolution model, it requires life from non-life. To make the simplest protein molecule, it takes 200 amino acids coming together in the correct configuration. And the odds of that happening are 1 to the 144 first power, beyond our mind's comprehension, because that's 1 with 144 zeros after that. We talk about evolution and the missing link, how that connects all these different things that grew from different things. And note, I'm not talking about adaptability or what's called microevolution, that changes like the animals and their beaks or the color or those kind of things that just kind of evolve due to need. I'm talking about rocks to monkeys to people, that kind of evolution. We also have complex systems, very complex systems with our eye, with our brain. Even Darwin himself said, and I quote this, "If it could be demonstrated that any complex organ existed which could not have been possibly been formed by numerous successive slight modification, my theory would absolutely break down." And that's from The Origin of the Species. But remember, they didn't have the tools like the electron microscope that we have today. So in summary, we talked about the life or non-life, missing link, complex systems, consciousness. How does consciousness evolve? And we see in our world today that things are breaking down. We are going from order to disorder, which is kind of the second law of thermodynamics. As opposed to a belief in a creator requires a belief that something obviously had to start this process. Who or what that could be other than God? Unless, of course, nothing created it. In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth, or was it in the beginning nothing created the heavens and the earth? You decide. Mr. Toastmaster.